Welcome to Community Cocktails with Kimberly, hosted by Kimberly Woodard, a realtor for nearly 20 years with Ebby Halliday Realtors. Join her every first and third Wednesday of the month as she meets with the top community influencers to help you get to know the area you want to call home. Don't just love your home, love your community. And now, your host, Kimberly Woodard.
Welcome, viewers, to this episode of Community Cocktails with Kimberly. You are going to learn so much about this nonprofit organization, and I can't wait to learn more about it too. I'm sitting here with Natalie Boyle with Mommies In Need.
Yeah.
And this is an organization that you started due to your own personal experiences.
Yeah. So it's one of those things. I often joke that I accidentally founded a nonprofit because it was never something I set out to do.
Yes.
It really just kind of came from my life. So I have twin girls, and they're just graduated 4th grade today.
Oh, yay.
I know. So it's very sweet. But when they were very little, I went through a series of really terrible health conditions. So from about the time, when they were 6 weeks old, I had my first hospital stay for about 10 days.
Oh my goodness.
And then up until the time they were 2.5, I had 6 surgeries and, so much time in the hospital, cancer diagnosis, and these were all, it's very strange. I actually had multiple health issues that were unrelated to each other, but just kept stacking on top of each other. So I had ulcerative colitis, and I had to have my colon removed, which is pretty much exactly as fun as that sounds like it would be, right?
Yeah.
And it was because of the colon removal that they did a body scan that they found my thyroid cancer. Okay. So I wound up being like surgery, biopsy, it was just nonstop for multiple years. And this was all during the time that my babies were really little.
Yeah, that's a very, demanding time for babies, nurturing everything.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah. And so it was one where, as hard as that was to get through, I always knew that I was still lucky because all my family lives here and my mom helped and my in-laws helped. And, we were really able to piece together a lot of care for the kids. And then we were able to afford a nanny to kind of fill in those gaps.
Right.
And so I started recognizing, well, what do people that don't have those kind of resources, what do they do? And a friend of mine named Annie, so she got diagnosed with colon cancer kind of right as I was just on the mend.
Yeah.
And she got sick, and she had a 2 and a 4-year-old at the time, and she didn't have any family in town, and she didn't have the ability to hire a nanny because she had been a stay-at-home parent to, at a sacrifice to their family so that she could be there. Right. And so I was talking to her in her hotel room. That would be nice, right? Oh, I'm like, it's so much fun. It's a hotel room in her hospital room.
Right.
And I was just sitting there with her and being like, well, what are you going to do? And she said, well, I guess I'm just going to have a friend watch my kid on chemo days, and then I'll just do it myself the rest of the time.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. And that's a hard time during chemo because you have ups and downs.
Yeah. And exhausted and sick and all of the things. And I just kind of was like, well, I don't want you to have to do that. And so it just very much was kind of, I felt called to just go ahead and say, well, why don't you, my nanny, I don't need her anymore. I'm better. Right. Why don't I send her to you? And she was like, well, I can't afford it. And so I said, well, we'll just get a bunch of people to chip in and pay for it. Yeah. So I started an Indiegogo campaign and, with the goal of raising a couple $1,000s to give her just a few weeks of childcare.
Right.
And very quickly, we started to recognize not only were people helping to fund this to the point that we had enough money for her entire chemo treatment of a full-time nanny.
Oh, wow.
But as I went through those first few weeks of fundraising, that people started to ask me constantly, well, how do I do this for somebody that I love?
Yes.
Because there was such a need. And so, it's very funny. I'm kind of big creative picture thinker, but my husband is, he's in finance, and he's, things very linearly. And he said to me one day, he was like, Natalie, you can't just have all this money sitting in a bank account and tell people you're like doing good things with it. You just can't do that anymore. So I was like, okay, well, I guess I better start a nonprofit. So I just filled out some paperwork and got a few people to be on the board. And it was just something where I just kind of organically started this thing. And then we started to get more requests for help. And so we started raising more money and hiring more nannies and taking on more families.
Wow.
And so in our first 5 years, we provided over 30,000 hours of free childcare to families going through a health crisis. And it was just, it started growing so quickly, I think, because first of all, there's a ton of need.
Yes.
But second of all, nobody else is doing this work.
Yeah.
And, when I go and I speak places, the number one thing that people are asking me about is why has this never been done before?
Right.
Why is this does this not exist? And I think, unfortunately, while moms are the backbone of our society,
we just don't think they're going to get sick.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's that thing of like, when I go and talk is every time I get people afterwards being like, I don't know what I would do. If I was in that situation, we couldn't have a nanny. Like, I don't know what I would do. And so it's very relatable, and everybody knows somebody that's gone through some kind of health issue, right?
Yes.
And so we aren't cancer specific. We just say for our in-home care, it's really about a health crisis. So we've helped with obviously a lot of cancer cases, but stroke and surgery and a major car accident. And, we do a lot of high risk pregnancies where a mom has to go on bed rest.
Yep.
But if you have a 2-year-old, you can't bed rest. It's just not possible.
No, I was there, my own personal experience. And I was fortunate that I did have a nanny. So, but if I didn't, I had a 2-year-old at home, and my parents and my in-laws, everyone lives, we all are like a little bubble. Yeah. So that was fortunate too, that the times that the nanny wasn't there, that then one of my parents would help with with my son, and my husband could come up to the hospital, and we could just rotate everything. But I mean, I wasn't there for 6 weeks. Yeah. And that's hard.
It's really hard. And it's hard to, when you're away from your kids and you're trying to focus, you got to focus on yourself and what you need to do. But you're so distracted with thinking about, well, where are my kids? Are they okay? Like, and it's that constant worry about your kids.
Yes.
And so we kind of just set out to start saying, well, like, we can't fix whatever medical situation they're going through, but we can make it a little easier, right? Yeah. We can just take some of that burden off. And so the way that we serve our in-home program, which is we still, we had to pause it for a while because of COVID, but we're back up and running now.
Oh, good.
So it's available to any family in the Dallas and Collin County areas.
Okay.
And what we do is we have nannies who are employees of the company, and we send them into our client family homes up to 40 hours a week for up to 6 months, and it's all completely free of cost to the family.
Wow.
So we just raise philanthropy dollars to provide this care. And we, like I said, we've been able to do about 30,000 hours with that model.
Wow.
And so then what happened a few years into doing the in-home model is we started having to say no to families for really heartbreaking reasons. So it was, you can't send a nanny into somebody's home if they don't have stable housing.
Right.
Or if there's 8 people living in a crowded apartment, or, all of these kind of situations where families that were already living in poverty really weren't generally a good fit for the service that we could provide.
Right.
And so that's when I got introduced to the Chief Innovation Officer, Dr. Kavita Bhavan, at Parkland. Okay. And so I kind of got introduced to her, and we just started, this little group of women, we started talking about, well, could we put a childcare center at a hospital? Like, would that be possible? And we started looking into it, and instantly Dr. Bhavan and the other kind of champions over at Parkland saw it, because I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but Parkland Hospital is the Dallas County safety net hospital.
Okay.
So it's largely uninsured, underinsured, Medicaid, kind of the hospital for everyone that can't.
Correct.
And they were talking about, they see, first of all, patients don't show up all the time. They cancel surgeries. They cancel things because they're not able to make it. But then also that they would bring their kids with them. And so especially with moms that have just had a baby and they're like holding their baby while they're having a gynecological procedure, like these stories that are just not good for the parent or baby,
and
right?
Which is unfortunate is that they don't have anywhere for that child to be. They can't leave baby at home. And so they have to bring them. And then what do you do?
Yeah.
I mean, you've got a baby and you've got to do a procedure on someone. So.
Yeah. So it's, they recognized the need for it, and we started working on it. And so, it happened to be ready in November of 2020.
Oh.
And so we opened. Yeah. And so we opened a childcare center at a hospital in the middle of the pandemic. But opening during that time allowed us to learn a couple of things really fast that might have taken us a lot longer to get to otherwise. And so we named it Annie's Place at Parkland after my friend Annie. Unfortunately, a few years ago, she had a recurrence of her cancer and she passed. And but it made me really happy to be able to do this and name something after her. So Annie's Place at Parkland is the center. And yeah, we started to recognize that, you know, the families that we were seeing, first of all, you know, our name is Mommies in Need, but it's any parent caregiver. And we started to see a lot more grandparents and foster parents and, you know, all kinds of different family situations. But then also started to recognize that particularly in a lower income population, that they're getting to a worse crisis because they're not getting preventative care. And so we started opening it up. So now it's anybody who's getting any kind of medical treatment at Parkland Hospital can use our drop-in childcare center for free.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, and so it's the most beautiful, just lovely space. We have incredible staff. And it's really about kind of pouring all this love and attention into the kids so that while mom is sitting in a chemo chair, she knows she doesn't have to worry. She knows her kids are having a blast. And we're texting her pictures throughout the day. And so we're really able to provide this. And so what happened too is we started to get other kinds of requests that we realized are part of our mission. And so one of the things that happened is the NICU called us and they said during COVID, that the parent visitation rates at the NICU had dropped by something like 40%. And the reason was because they stopped allowing siblings in the building. So if a single mom has just had a baby and also has a 2-year-old, they can't go spend time with their NICU baby.
Oh, wow.
And so they said, well, can our parents drop their other kids off so they can spend time with their baby in the NICU? Of course, absolutely. And the other thing we started doing is providing backup care for first responders because the hospital staff, if they couldn't be there, then the patients can't get their treatment, right? So we kind of revamped our mission into what we now say it's caring for kids so families can access healthcare. And it's really sort of anywhere where healthcare and childcare meet, that's our sweet spot, and that's what we're there to solve for.
Oh, wow.
And so since we opened in November 2020, we've already provided care for more than 2,000 medical appointments. Yeah, the demand is huge. And it's something that as we've built out the center, and we're already in talks with other hospitals about expanding it. It was always, once we came up with this kind of idea around
the concept,
the hospital care, we said, you know, every hospital could just have a small childcare center, and then no woman would ever have to miss a medical appointment because they didn't have childcare. It's a solvable problem, right?
It is because, I mean, there are so many people. I mean, you've got so many different needs out there, and again, I think as a mom, you always put your kids first. And so if you can't get something, you know, arranged for your kids, then you're always second. So you're going to put that to the back burner and keep putting it. So now this allows you to put yourself a little bit first and know that your kids are being taken care of.
Exactly. And not just taken care of, but, you know, at Annie's Place at Parkland, so every single one of our teachers is trained in trauma-informed care and play therapy.
Oh, nice.
Because we see a lot of kids that are, you know, in these crisis situations in their homes. You know, their parents really sick and they're having to deal with that. We have an on-site play therapist who is a full-time play therapist that works out of Annie's Place. And she can do ongoing one-on-one sessions with kids, but she's also there to do crisis interventions. So sometimes a kid will come in and it's the first time they've ever been away from their parent and they're in a brand new place and they're acting out or they're hitting or whatever it might be, but we have somebody who's specially trained to be able to help that child. We have a play therapy room where they can go and kind of safely express their anger and get to a calmer place. And so, and again, everything that we do, the patients don't have to pay a thing for it. It is all completely free of cost. And that's done, you know, through community support. And we've been able to really impact a lot of lives since we've opened.
That is remarkable, and I think you're doing such a great thing for the community. So, question on at the hospital, your childcare. So, do you have volunteers? Do you have paid employees?
So we are a licensed childcare center, so we have to have paid employees. And one of the things that we learned is that you know, you really, in order to provide really good, consistent care, you need to have them as employees, and you have to have really, you know, well trained. We really pour a ton of training and stuff into our teachers. But we do have volunteer programs where people can be extra sets of hands in the classroom, right?
Oh,
So we
nice.
always have to have a licensed teacher with any child.
Right.
But we, so in Texas, you can have like 24 4-year-olds to one teacher. We don't do those kind of ratios. We staff at 4 to 1.
Okay.
And the reason is because it's in and out all day. It's first day of preschool every day because
Right.
there are always kids that have never been there before.
Yes.
And so with these small ratios, we're able to really give the kids that one-on-one attention that they need and that's so good for them. And one of the ways that we do that is through our volunteer program. So we do volunteers, we do interns. We actually work with an organization called the Senior Source, and they have a program where they employ seniors and send them into organizations to be what do they call it? They call
Like
they call it a foster grandma or something.
I love it.
And so we have a couple of women that come and help hold the babies, and we have Granny D, and it's just it's the sweetest thing. And so so if anybody is listening and wants to get involved, we absolutely have classroom volunteers. We also always need stuff, right? Because one of the things that we try to do, because so many of our families are living in really hard conditions, we don't ask them to bring anything. So we provide diapers, wipes, formula, baby clothes, literally anything that they could need while they're there. So there's just no barrier to care, right? And then we try to just kind of pour all kinds of extra resources to the kids. So for every holiday, we do some kind of drive. And so a lot of, Girl Scout groups or moms groups or things, we'll put together, Thanksgiving baskets for the families, or, all of the stuff that we can do to kind of help surround that family with care and love, especially when they're going through, a cancer treatment or something.
Well, and that just, I love that you do that, because that's another thing that is a stressful thing for, a mom. Maybe she's going through a major health situation, and money's tight, and then here comes the holidays, and so she's kind of scrambling. What am I doing and everything? Now, what's the age limits for the center?
We are actually typically it's 0 to 6 is what we're built for. During summers and school holidays, we actually do get kids up to about 9, 10. We can keep entertained. Anything older than that, they're going to get bored.
Right.
But one of the things that we do that's different is we actually accept newborns. So most childcare centers won't take kids until 6 weeks at a bare minimum. But because we get a lot of moms with postpartum complications, we've had kids as young as 3 days old in our center, little teeny babies. Of course, it's really hard for me when the teeny babies are there because I just want to sit and hold them all day. But so we are able to do that. And again, that's because we can get extra staff. And so when we have a high needs infant like that, we'll staff it 1 to 1, so that we're really able to make sure we're taking great care of the kids.
Oh my goodness. You guys are doing such a remarkable thing for the community. I can see the need here in our area, and to grow to other hospitals. I love, that's what you guys are in the works on, because it really is. It's something that every hospital really should have. And I don't know why it's taken so long.
Well, it is. And, it's interesting because there's a lot of focus in the medical field right now on what's called social determinants of health. So that's saying that somebody can't be healthy if they don't have food, if they don't have clean water, if they don't have shelter, all of those kinds of things. But childcare's never been discussed as part of that. And so we're starting to actually do advocacy work to get childcare on that social determinants of health list, because it is. It is. 100% people, they get sicker because they're not getting treatment for what they need.
Yeah, they're not taking care of themselves.
Exactly.
If you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anyone else.
Yeah, it's that oxygen mask. You put yours on first and then your child's.
Correct. Wow. Well, I have learned so much. So if we have viewers out there that want to donate or help, or it sounds like you guys have some fundraisers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Drives.
So, yes, it's Mommies in Need. Our website is mommiesinneed.org, and you can go there and you can find kind of a little bit of everything on what we do, ways to get involved, to donate, to volunteer. We always list all of our events and things up there. So that's the hub and the place to go. And then please, the big thing too is we just are trying to raise awareness that this help exists. So if you know someone that is going through a health crisis, we're able to, go in the homes in Dallas and Collin County. And at Annie's Place, we can see a lot of kids, and that's in the medical district. So.
Well, I love it. I have learned so much, Natalie, and I cheers you for starting this.
Thank you.
look forward to seeing more centers around.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're
Cheers.
welcome.
Thanks for tuning in. If you'd like to contact Kimberly with your real estate needs, you can reach her at kimberlywoodard.ebby.com. We hope you enjoyed our guest this week, and remember, don't just love your home, love your community.